This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we uncover and talk about valuable lessons about life, leadership, creativity, and all the other good stuff from unexpected sources. If you are new to the show, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And for all my longtime listeners, Team PYP, you know I think you're awesome. I'm your host, Mary Lou Kaiser, and I've been the host here at PYP for 10 years. I'm also an author and creator and aspiring toy and game designer, and I love exploring big ideas through conversations with amazing guests. I also like to do solo episodes like I am today and look at big ideas through symbols and metaphors. I consider myself a deep thinker, which brings me to today's topic, diving into the intriguing world of leadership through the lens of cinema. I am flying solo today, and I got the inspiration for today's episode from watching the movie Oppenheimer the other night. It's about 3 hours long. It's up for 13 Oscars, which, as of this recording, will take place in 4 days. I predict Oppenheimer will walk away with the lion's share of awards on Sunday because it is a cinematic masterpiece with first-rate acting by so many great actors of our time, including Robert Downey Jr., who was magnificent in his role as Oppenheimer's foil, and Emily Blount, who played Oppenheimer's wife. She was tremendous. That was a hard character to play, and she just killed it. Such a great movie. Now, before I get into it, I just want to let you know I'm not going to spoil anything for those of you who haven't seen this movie. But if you want to go to the movie clean and not have any kind of predetermined thoughts, then I would recommend coming back to this episode, listening to it after you've watched the movie. If seeing the movie doesn't matter to you, but you want to hear what I have to say, then stick around. But I just wanted to give that. I'm not going to give anything big away from the film. I titled today's episode, It's Paradoxical and Yet It Works, Some Non-Obvious Takeaways About Leadership from the movie Oppenheimer, because one, I'm a literary geek. I'm a former English teacher. I can't help myself. When I sit down and watch something, I'm going to find subtle takeaways from exceptional storytelling. And like I said already, the movie Oppenheimer is an example of exceptional storytelling. And number two, the more I dive into the topic of leadership through conversations on this podcast, the less I can succinctly define what leadership is. And I'm also seeing how leadership is paradoxical the deeper I go into this topic of leadership, because leadership isn't always straightforward, is it? It's often a delicate balance of conflicting elements or polar opposites. And the truth lies somewhere within that tension. This is why movies like Oppenheimer are so vital to helping us play our positions, because we can learn so much about other people and decision making and tough situations. We can also learn about ourselves through great stories. All right. In the movie, we witness J. Robert Oppenheimer, the brilliant physicist, tasked with leading the Manhattan Project during World War II. And the Manhattan Project was all about the development of the atomic bomb. And in hindsight, as we all have now, we understand what detonating the atomic bomb has meant for civilization and the planet and all on and so forth. What's so brilliant about this story is it captures the conflict that the people who were involved in this project and Oppenheimer was at the center of it, that they faced because they could see, even though they hadn't physically seen, they could sense that the development and then detonation of this bomb was going to change the world. And that's a really interesting position to be in. And I want to argue that many of us alive today have gone through a variation of that when the internet hit, when social media hit, and now with artificial intelligence, we are all witnessing a massive, fundamental shift in the way the world is going to work. And we do not know what the long-term fallout is going to be. There are people who are making all kinds of predictions, of course. I include myself in that. And just like in the movie, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of these greed is and becoming a part of history. All of these things play into how we show up each day. And it's really, really interesting to witness Oppenheimer's journey throughout the film as he's a part of this project. And his story unveils the complexities of leadership, showcasing how effective leaders must navigate paradoxes. Now, the first scene of several that punched me in the face was when Oppenheimer is explaining quantum mechanics to the only student who showed up for his first class at Cal Berkeley. And you have to remember, back in the 30s and 40s, when quantum mechanics was a new field, again, much like AI, and the buzz really hadn't started yet. So in this scene, Oppenheimer asks the student, is light made up of particles or waves? Quantum mechanics says it's both. How can it be both? And the student says it can't, and Oppenheimer says it can't, but it is. It's paradoxical, and yet it works. And I want you to think about that line. It's paradoxical, and yet it works. And this can be applied to so many aspects of our lives, from our primary relationships to the work that we do, to the pull we feel for something more, and yet we want to stay grounded in where we are. It can't, but it is. It's paradoxical, and yet it works. Then the scene goes on, and Oppenheimer turns to the blackboard, and he starts writing out all these symbols, and then the scene continues from there. All right? So again, punch in the throat moment for me. One key takeaway from this is the tension between control and collaboration, right? The key word in this is tension. Oppenheimer, while overseeing the top secret project of developing the atomic bomb, he understood the importance of empowering his team and fostering collaboration. He embraced diverse perspectives. He asked a lot of questions, and he encouraged open dialogue, even in the midst of immense pressure. And let me tell you, as these things begin to balloon, right, as new technology emerges, as new ways of thinking emerge, there is going to be people who embrace it and people who push it away and counter it. That's the law of polarity, and it was no different for Oppenheimer. Another paradox in the film lies in the balance between confidence and humility. I remember turning to my mom when the movie was over, and I said, the egos that these men had, and women, because there are a couple of female characters in the movie, although they're not the stars, but they are so vitally important. And I'm not going to go into that tension in this episode. I may address that in another one because I think it's fascinating, and I think it is important in our time where there's a lot of questioning about gender roles, but I digress. Going back to Oppenheimer, despite his exceptional intellect, he displayed humility. He acknowledged the contributions of his team. He was open to feedback. And this blend of confidence and humility earned him respect and loyalty from his colleagues and allowed him to continue to lead. I've had many conversations here at PYP with leaders who have talked about this tension the, reining ourselves in when we feel like we're getting a little bit too cocky and then coming back down to earth and going to the back of the room, right? I've known leaders over the years who've said that a mark of a great leader is how quickly he or she goes from the front of the room to the back of the room. And Oppenheimer didn't need to be in the spotlight all the time, although he was put in the spotlight a lot. And you could tell that he really wrestled with that. The Oppenheimer story also highlights the paradox of innovation and ethics. Again, we are dealing with that today with artificial intelligence. What are the ethics about the use of something that some really, really smart people are saying within a few years will have an IQ pushing up against 200 or something like that? I don't even know. I don't have those figures in front of me, so forgive me for that. Oppenheimer, as a leader, faced moral dilemmas surrounding the creation of the atomic bomb. His ability to navigate those complexities with integrity, that really underscores the importance of ethical leadership, even in times of crisis. We are still experiencing the fallout of a major global crisis. Even though the pandemic is officially over, the ripple effect continues to impact all of us in perhaps not as overt ways as it once did during, the height of it, but the hangover is still here, right? So the complexities of leadership in a post-pandemic world are really no different than what Oppenheimer was facing. We can learn many things from Oppenheimer's leadership journey. A couple of things. It's clear that effective leadership often requires embracing paradoxes, right? Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Stay locked down, roll the dice and take a flight. Move forward with a project that you sense could have ethical fallout in favor of innovation. This is leadership. Two things that seem to be in opposition on the surface can actually be true at the same time. And by acknowledging and navigating these tensions, leaders can inspire trust and foster innovation and ultimately achieve success at different levels. But one thing to keep in mind is for every decision we make as a leader of our lives, of our teams, of our families, of our communities, whatever leadership role you are in, there are consequences of every decision we make. And we often aren't aware of those consequences. Oppenheimer was aware that what he had created, this incredible thing called the atomic bomb that was built upon new knowledge, new information, new formulas, new discoveries. It was so exciting and so heady and it garnered him, magazine cover stories and interviews and people cheering for him. And yet, there were so many other consequences that weren't so great. So I'm going to encourage you, team, today that as we reflect on Oppenheimer's story, let's remember that leadership is not about adhering to a rigid set of rules, but rather embracing complexity and ambiguity with grace and determination. We're not always going to get it right. We're going to get a lot right, and we're going to get some things that we look back and say, oh my God, what was that? And that's part of life. Learning how to accept that and still move forward, I think, is a skill. Too many people are afraid to do anything because they fear the consequence. And again, I sound like a broken record when I quote the song Free Will by Rush. But when you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, right? So with that, I will say I've got a great conversation with an amazing woman about ready to drop. You're going to love. She grew up in a wine-making family and has a lot to share with us about the wine industry as well as her leadership journey. And I invite you to join us next time for that conversation. Until then, remember, it is the paradoxes that make leadership both challenging and rewarding. And also, it is always a great day to get out there and play your position, even when you sometimes don't feel like it. There's a paradox, right? This is Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next time.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.